Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular business meeting of the Board of School Trustees held here in public, 6 p.m. on January 22nd, 2024. Item 2 on tonight's agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Everyone can please rise. Mr. Babjack will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Item 2 tonight, patrons registered comments on educational issues. There being none, we'll move on to item 3, consent agenda. Dr. Terrell.
Thank you. For your consideration this evening, we have 3.01, which is the minute from our meetings previously. We have 3.02, which is our uniform conflict of interest disclosure statements. 3.03, the personnel agenda. 3.04, recommendation for employment of candidates pursuant to Indiana Code 20-26-5-11.2. And then finally, 3.05, the voucher registered checks as listed.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration for the approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Babjack. Question or discussion?
Mr. Angel, is it possible to separate 3.03 and 3.04?
Being that it's in the consent agenda, is it one item or two? Like, is it 3.03 or is it just 3.04? Or is it both?
Separate those for voting purposes?
Being that it's in the consent agenda, I don't think we're allowed to do that unless we modify the motion. So I could do that.
You could modify the motion.
So I'll modify the motion. Looking for approval of the consent agenda, eliminating item 3.04. So we're looking for a motion to approve items 3.01, 3.02. Are we good with 3.03? Regular personnel agenda?
Sure.
3.03 and 3.05, excluding 3.04. May I have a motion?
Move to approve 3.01, 3.02, 3.03, and 3.05 of the consent agenda.
A second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Vassar. A motion was made by Mr. Smith. Those in favor of 3.01, 3.02, 3.03, and 3.05 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Motion to approve recommendation for employment of candidates pursuant to IC 20-26-5-11.2, item 3.04. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Babjack. All those in favor of approving 3.04 signify by saying aye. Oh, any questions or just for a vote?
Yeah, before the vote, I just, I had a really nice discussion with Mr. Keegan today about this. This is new, and I don't feel comfortable enough not knowing about these folks, but I don't know how much I can say.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable not knowing what the transgression, whatever it may be.
Okay, fair enough. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion approves 3-1. Thank you very much. Item 4, action items, 4.01, Resolution 841, my site, 2023 year-end appropriation transfers. Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We bring before you, as we do every year, the appropriation transfers for the end of the year 2023. These are the end-of-year transfers that we ask you to allow us to do. We bring back to you at the end of the year for the budgets. We complete those budgets, as you know, in August and September of 18 months prior to that end of this past calendar year. And we don't always get it exactly right, and we use these to transfer the appropriations around to match them up to zero them out. So with that, we recommend approval of the transfers for end of the year 2023 and Resolution 841.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration for the approval of the year-end transfers for 2023 and Resolution 841. May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vassar, seconded by Mr. Smith. Questions or discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 4-0. Item 4.02, environmental remediation, Solon Robinson Elementary. Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President. We solicited bids for environmental remediation at Solon Robinson Elementary. With that, we did receive 4 bids. Our low bid has since requested to pull their bid. They have left the area. So with that, we have a bid for the work for Safe Environmental Corp., the amount of $286,347 for the environmental remediation at Solon Robinson.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration for the approval of the environmental remediation at Solon Robinson Elementary to Safe Environmental Corp. for the amount of $286,347. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Babjack. Question or discussion? Please, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 4-0. 4.03, Administration Building, Jerry Ross, Lake Street, Solon Robinson, Timothy Ball, and Winfield Furniture Award. Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President. This request for purchase of furniture finishes out the new furniture for all of our construction projects. Not saying we won't have some small pieces we may need to fit in, but these are the large purchases that tie in with the construction. So as construction gets done, furniture gets delivered. It's important for us as we use this national bid through KI like we have with our other purchases. So with that, we're recommending approval of the furniture for the administration building, $26,784.31. Jerry Ross for $68,365. Lake Street, $160,091.42. Solon Robinson for $55,127.57. Timothy Ball, $42,836.79. And Winfield Elementary for $52,818.86 from KI.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration for approval of furniture for the Administration Center in the amount of $26,784.31. Jerry Ross for $68,365. Lake Street for $160,091.42. Solon Robinson for $55,127.57. Timothy Ball for $42,836.79. And Winfield for $52,818.86 from KI Inc. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Babjack, seconded by Mr. Smith. Questions or discussion?
Matt, is somebody?
Push your button.
Oh, we got it.
Oh, fine.
Is some of the furniture then moved out? What happens with the old stuff?
The old stuff either be donated or auctioned off if worth anything of value.
A time frame on that, Mr. Reese, or there's no set time frame?
Each one's going to be a little bit different as the construction
on-
projects get done. Furniture gets delivered for those areas, especially at the elementary buildings. As you're staging that, it doesn't always all happen at one time. But it's why we're using somebody like KI with their services. So as areas open up, new furniture gets in and we're ready to go.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 4-0. 4.04, Resolution 842, disposition of real property, delegation of authority to superintendent. Dr. Terrell.
Thank you. For your consideration this evening, we have Resolution 842, as Scott just mentioned. Per your board policy, 7300, it requires the Board of School Trustees to dispose of real estate that is no longer needed for any of our educational programs here in Crown Point Schools. The former administration building located at 200 East North Street, we no longer have a use for that as a school building here within our district. So we're bringing this to you tonight for asking you to approve the disposition of the real estate property and the delegation authority to me, the superintendent of schools, to proceed as we move through the required steps in order to dispose of that property.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration for the disposition of property and building located at 200 East North Street, Crown Point, Indiana, zip code of 46307, and to authorize and delegate to the superintendent all necessary duties and powers to comply with Board Policy 7300 and the Indiana Code 20-26-7.1-1, and to take all actions necessary to comply in regards, and also with the approval of Resolution 842. May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vassar, second by Mr. Babjak. Question or discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Dr. Terrell. Discussion and report items, policy additions and revisions, first reading, Mr. Akino.
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. This evening, we bring to you for a first reading another set of policies to consider. Again, for a first reading, they would be policy 6110, grant funds. This provides guidance on receiving, handling grant funds from government agencies, foundations, businesses, and individuals. Policy 6320, purchasing. This policy provides guidance to the purchasing agent or treasurer of the school corporation. In addition to purchases, it also addresses the procurement of federal grants. Policy 6325, the procurement federal grants and funds. This policy addresses the procurement of all supplies, materials, equipment, and services paid from federal funds or school corporation matching funds. Within those three policies that I just listed, there are references to conflict of interest policies, which we want to update at this point as well. So the remaining three, 1130, 3113, and 4113, deal with conflict of interest with different employee types. So what we were recommending this evening is just a first reading of these policies, and we look forward to bringing them back to you next month for a possible waiving of a second reading and approval. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other a chance to review those policies? If we have any discussion, we'll have that at the second reading and the approval of those. Thank you, Mr. Akiwa. 5.02, the 2025-2026 school calendar. Dr. Terrell, sorry.
Thank you. With the calendar that was presented to all of you, I just want to go through a few things and highlight a couple of different dates. This is for the 25-26 school year. Our practice has been to continue to keep 2 years out there so our parents and teachers, students have the opportunity to plan for that in advance. The 25-26 calendar looks very similar to the 24-25 calendar. Has us beginning school the second week of August, teachers' first day on August 11th, students' first day August 13th. Continues the practice of a full week of fall break. The same with 3 days for Thanksgiving break. One of the advantages that we have both next year and in 25-26 is we're back to having 2 full weeks of Christmas break rather than having to break them up like we did this year, which can present a challenge. One of the things to note as we continue looking through the spring semester, spring break is a little bit later, the beginning on March 30th and concluding on Good Friday, April 3rd. Because of Good Friday being an earlier time of the month this year, that will enable us for our students' last day to be May 29th, and teachers will come back for that June 1st final day for teachers, but at least students do not have to be back in the building after Memorial Day. So with that, actually they will be back. They'll not be back in the building in the month of June for 1 day. So with that, we bring before you this calendar. Our practice has not been to vote on the calendars, but it's more an opportunity to get feedback from you and to see if there's any suggestions that you have, or if you guys are good with the calendar, and we will move forward with that.
Questions or discussions on the topic for the 2025-2026 school calendar? And as Dr. Terrell mentioned in his discussion regarding it, it's never been a voting matter. We've always taken the right, administration moving forward with that calendar. So if there's no questions or discussion based on that calendar, we'll move on to information items. Item 6, we good? Thank you. Item 6, information items. I want to make sure I did this in order. Superintendent's discussion groups. Anything from our redevelopment commissions? Mr. Vassar?
It's been rescheduled in Cedar Lake for tomorrow evening. They had a utility issue a couple of weeks ago, so I have no report until tomorrow night.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Nothing from Ground Point.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to 6.02, Director of Grants and Assessments, Mr. Hardman.
Good evening, members of the board. Good to be back. Wanted to give you a little bit of information looking ahead to 25-26. There's going to be a change in the testing, iLearn testing, grades 3 through 8. They're actually going to go through a through-year testing. That means there's going to be actually 3 checkpoints that are going to take place that will begin in as early as September. And then there's going to be the iLearn testing that will take place traditionally that we have in April. The checkpoints are more of a formative assessment. They're aligned to certain standards, learning in math and language arts that are covered during that period of time. The checkpoint occurs so that you can monitor and measure how your children, how the students have done on those. And then there's another window where there's additional standards or a repeat of standards that are really critical. There's another checkpoint, which are different questions, different standards being tested. And then finally, there's another checkpoint that will take place in the spring prior to the actual iLearn. iLearn test is going to be shorter at that point in time, which is a good thing. The testing that's going to be the checkpoints will be 30 to 45 minutes untimed, but it's good feedback for our children as to how they're doing and to address their needs. Also, you can repeat a checkpoint one time. So for instance, if you want to re-give one of the checkpoints to measure how students have done with their intervention, we have that opportunity also. So that's going to be coming in 25-26. We as a district have chosen to opt in to that cycle next year. So we'll be opting into that so that we can understand better the way the system's going to work. I think it gives us a year to plan how we're going to adjust our formative assessment. Right now we use NWEA. We have things happening that are funded out of the formative assessment grant. That's going to go away. So there's some things next year that we want to just be a part of so that we can begin to develop our strategies for testing the following year. So we will be opting in. We actually submitted today the opt-in notification to the state for the iLearn testing, the new iLearn testing. Next year's test will be the same. So in 24-25, when we opt in, the iLearn test that happens in April, May will be the same one. It's not going to change until 25-26 school year. So wanted to inform you, and if you have any questions, at least right now, just give you an overview of what's going to be taking place over the next year or two.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Any questions?
So Jim, would there still be checkpoints along the way even though the test is still the same?
There's checkpoints.
For next,
Next year,
Yeah.
we're opting into the checkpoints.
We
We're
are.
going to do the checkpoints, but just know that the test is not the shorter version of the iLearn test.
Gotcha.
That will not start until 25-26.
okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah,
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Harmon?
that's all.
Okay, thank you. 6.03, Director of Elementary Education, Mr. Chiquina. I'll try to time that better so you're not running up here. No, I'm still getting used to this new format.
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. Given our calendar discussion earlier, thought I would give you a little overview of what the elementary teachers and staff will be up to on our e-learning day coming up next week on January 31st. This day is all about professional development and professional collaboration. Our elementary teachers, we meet all together with them periodically throughout the year. Most of those meetings are virtual on Zoom before school starts, before students show up. But we always get feedback from our teachers after those meetings, and one thing we hear pretty overwhelmingly is that they appreciate the time to be together in bigger chunks and in person to collaborate. So that's what we will be doing next Wednesday. Elementary teachers will start all together at Wheeler Middle School. We'll all be in the gym together to start with, and then what we'll do is we break out into grade level meetings. So a principal or a couple administrators will take each grade level. I kind of go over the activity, the plan with the principals. I'm actually doing that tomorrow, and then the principals lead that activity with one grade level at a time. That's a good way that we've found to break things up and give teachers the opportunity to really spend time talking to each other and sharing about what's working. We're right at the point where we're taking those middle of the year NWEA assessments, so we also want to take a little bit of time to celebrate the success that we're seeing. There's a lot of good things that we're seeing, so we want to make sure that we recognize that with our teachers as well. After that time at Wheeler in the morning, teachers will go back to their buildings. They'll engage in different activities at their building level for building level PD or professional collaboration or in their teams. Also at the elementary level, one thing we started and we're still continuing is having a half hour set aside for teachers to connect with their students on those days in case students need support. So that'll still be happening on those days. And finally, we're going to end that day for the elementary folks with some professional development in the area of inclusion and universal design for learning. But I don't want to steal Heather's thunder. I'm sure she will cover that when she comes up here. Any
Thank you, Mr.
questions?
Chagina. Just for our purposes, how many days, again, do we get this year of the learning days where we do the collaboration? 3?
4.
4, okay.
Yes.
All right, just want to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Director of Secondary Education, Mrs. Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. Good evening. I will continue expanding on what Mr. Chikina talked about, but focused on secondary and what we will be targeting on January 31st for the e-learning day. We too will be participating in Universal Design for Learning and Inclusion with Dr. Louis Lord Nelson. And then we'll have a series of both teacher-led and administrator-led professional development. What I really look forward to on these days is the educator growth, the collaboration, that all drive towards increasing student engagement, student success. At the middle schools, our professional learning communities have identified a student-centered challenge and inquiry question based on data, and so they are looking to share strategies and action steps to be able to show greater growth in those areas. They'll also focus on technology and data analysis. We'll have middle of the year NWEA data. We'll also continue to be looking at iLearn data from last year to make sure that students are prepared adequately for that assessment. And then we also ask that they look at classroom data as well, as we want to make sure that they are collaborating, aligning, and providing a common educational experience for our students. At the high school, there will be a lot of diversity in terms of the programming that they'll have to help support teachers. There will be a heavy focus on using our Crown Point Community School Corporation supported technology, so that's Parent Square, Edpuzzle, Pear Deck, Screencastify, our Clear Touch panels, buzz features to provide feedback to students. We also have a great opportunity for our gen ed and special education teachers to work together. Those that co-teach will have time. We have our ELA and math district specialists who will be working with our ELA and math teachers to support SAT discussions, and again, really giving our teachers the opportunity to collaborate and to really dig into seeing where we're currently at, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. Lastly, I would like to just share really an exciting event that took place this last Saturday. Taft Middle School was able to host for the first time the Science Olympiad competition, and it was quite an event. Mr. Angel was there, as were many of our board members. We have Dr. Terrell was in, kind of in the loop of everything and handed out awards, as did Mr. Gianfermi. And this was quite an undertaking. The coaches from Taft and Wheeler worked together along with sponsors, parents, volunteers, the students, to host over 500 students. We had 15 high schools and 13 middle schools from Indiana and Illinois that were competing. And as we were able to be part of the award ceremony, it was so reassuring to see the passion and the talent that our students have for the sciences, whether those are the natural sciences, physical science, forensics. When you heard about the 23 different events in which they could compete, just really what talent they have, and I'm so proud that our corporation is able to provide this opportunity to our students. The enthusiasm was very much felt both in the gymnasium and in the auditorium when awards were distributed. So I would just really like to thank all of the sponsors and those involved for their hard work and their thoughtfulness in planning this event, and really congratulate all of the students who participated. Taft ended up taking second place overall. Wheeler came in 5th place, and Crown Point High School came in 7th overall. So just a really great event. If in the future you have the opportunity to attend, I highly recommend that you do so, because it's pretty cool to get to see what our kids can do.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Next on the agenda, let's see, 6.05. Watch how I pause this perfectly. Director of Exceptional Education, Mrs. Paskus.
Thank you. I appreciate the wait time. Good evening, President Angel, members of the board. Just an update on what's happening in exceptional education. Back on January 11th, we had a parent advisory group meeting here at the new administration building. It was exciting. Our group got to take a tour of the building, as well as hear updates in the department, including the growth and some of the programming ads we've had over the last year. We also had a demonstration of one of our RoboKine robots, so Milo did put on a little bit of a show for our parents. And then Dr. Terrell also joined us and spoke with our parents. So hopefully we are able to, one of the things parents asked for is a way to help some of our parents going through the special education process for the first time if their child does qualify. So we're starting with the preschool level of a brochure and resources parents can use to help navigate the special education process. On January 31st for e-learning, exceptional education has quite a bit going on. It's an opportunity for us to work with teachers, paraprofessionals, and our related service providers. So a couple of our speech language pathologists are going to be working with paraprofessionals on communication techniques for our students who may be nonverbal or may have some communication struggles. Some of our students use a device that looks similar to this called AAC. It's their voice, and it has pictures and symbols they use to communicate, so that's one of the things they'll take the paraprofessionals through to learn how to work with students with such needs. We also have applied skills teachers will be receiving deeper training on one of their curriculum resources called Unique Learning System. Our elementary resource teachers are going to be receiving training from one of our school psychologists and a couple of our diagnosticians on how to accommodate students with mild intellectual disabilities in the general education environment. And then we have a handful of exceptional education staff members who will be part of the Universal Design for Learning inclusion team training that is going to take place here at the admin building. So what Dr. Louie Lord Nelson, who's a national consultant, she is going to take she's done some coaching visits. So she visited over 2 days, several of our schools, observed what teachers were doing. It was informal, not evaluations, and gave feedback on how they could take what they were doing and use this, what they call UDL framework. So she is aware of our BUZZ curriculum and wants to help them examine their curriculum and how they can reduce barriers and offer other learning pathways for students. We're also going to start this week at our principal's cabinet meeting with a self-assessment that our leaders will go through, measuring their current knowledge of UDL practices and kind of how that looks at their building.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Paskus. Chief Human Resource missed one. Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Gianfermi.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members. Just let me start off by saying of the four people that talked before you, just kind of indicated on how hard that we do work to try to provide our teachers and instructional staff that professional development when we have those e-learning days, and I really appreciate all their efforts that they put in to make that worthwhile time for our teachers, and thanking our teachers and instructional staff, because they really do show up and put in a lot of effort on those days to kind of improve what we're doing for our students. Quick comment on the Taft Science Olympiad. It was a great event to attend. I had never attended one. It's the first one that we've hosted in our district, from what I understand. And I didn't understand that the students really didn't know what place they had come in until it was announced right there as we were handing out the ribbons. So it was great to see like high school kids just running over each other down the bleachers to come and get their third place ribbon or whatever they won at that time. But that's it just indicated how much work they put in. Our people did a great job of putting that together. Prior to that, on January 6th, there was a robotics tournament at that Taft Middle School. So it just shows you that our coaches and our teachers are really using that facility to provide some great opportunities, not only for our students, for a lot of neighboring students as well. It is a great facility to host those kind of events. So I'm glad to see that we're using it and people are benefiting from it. Speaking of events, just want to mention this to you that every Crown Point High School VEX robotics team will be attending the Northwest Wisconsin VRC Showdown on Thursday and Friday. And the really cool part about this is that it is at Lambeau Field. I don't know if it's on the frozen tundra, but I had to say that because I had an opportunity. So I think they're inside
I will be
mostly.
supervising that event.
But again, thanks to our high school coaches for giving our kids that's a really cool opportunity for them. And then finally, in CTE programming, our director of our co-op, our South Lake Career Co-op, Tim Summers, brought an opportunity to us about a month or so ago. The Perkins Grant, which is a federal grant, had additional funding in it this year, so they offered us an opportunity, what they were calling a reserve grant, kind of just additional monies that you had to put in for. And Lynn Elkire, our associate principal, did an awesome job of putting together all of the equipment, the beds, the simulation mannequins, all the medical equipment we need to furnish and equip our CNA lab, which has just been completed in the construction project. So she received just about $39,000 to fully furnish that lab, and that's going to be a great pathway for our students who are interested in the medical field. So thank her for all her work on that, and thanks, Tim, for bringing that to our attention. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Gianfermi. 6.07, Chief Human Resource Officer, Mr. Akiwa.
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. Two items tonight. I want to pass along a thank you to a gentleman sitting here in front of us, and that's Mr. Dave Colson, unsung hero over here, who really helps us out with quite a bit. And me particular in my department, I just want to thank him for doing wellness checks on a lot of our families. He does checks on our McKinney-Vento families. He also helps us out validating and confirming residency in some areas where we have questions. These are not easy visits to do, sometimes very uncomfortable checks, but I just want to thank you, Dave, personally for all that you do for us in a role that many don't know about, but it's a great role, and it's very appreciated by my department and the principals and everybody else. So just way to go, Dave. Thanks. And as far as activities, just wanted to bring to the board's attention that we're getting to the end of January into February. We're looking into next year already, so we're starting to roll up some numbers, and we'll be rolling up our sleeves as well as we look at possible staffing needs for the next school year. So we'll keep you posted as those efforts move forward, and that's all I have for you this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kiwa. Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, happy to recognize tonight the business office. We were actually closed with the financials by the end of the calendar year on January 9th, and by January 10th, a few short days, we were back ordering supplies and goods back at the building for the 2024 year. That's the quickest I can remember us turning that around in quite a while. We've normally gone 2 or 3 weeks before we were able to open up 24 and start doing our normal business operations and getting goods and services out to the building. So we're very happy with how they accomplished that goal over this winter. We had some people out during that period, and everybody stepped up and took care of some business. So just want to thank them for the extra work they did over the break. And then we were all excited to take a few days off after the break was over once we got the mission accomplished. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. 6.09, Director of Communication, Mrs. Allen.
Thank you. Good evening. In November, the board approved to apply for and receive a grant from DOE and RoboKind for assistive technology in the form of robots. As Mrs. Paskus mentioned, they are here, and we were able to be there on the first day that our teachers and students were introduced to these, and we created a little video to share with our community. So my update is in the form of a video this evening. So we'll share this with our community, social media, website, and newsletters in the upcoming week. But thank you to Kelly for her interview, and also thank you to Rutch, who is our digital media specialist who puts together all of that footage.
Thank you. 6.10, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Terrell.
Thank you. Just a few things this evening. Want to recognize our maintenance department and our building custodians during this winter weather and the challenges that it presents. We've had quite a stretch here over the last 10, 12 days, and it's continuing even as we speak. I just want to thank them. I know they get there early and spend a lot of time and extra effort on top of all their other things that they have to do, just making sure that our buildings are ready, our parking lots are ready, and we appreciate that. Also with that, I want to thank Marty Freeman, who generally gets out on the roads about 3 a.m., and usually I get my first text from him about 4, just gathering data and information and sharing that back. No, Marty Freeman does not make the call. Do not call him complaining. You can call me. That's all on me. So I want to thank him. The other thing that I want to take the opportunity, and that is January is School Board Appreciation Month, and I just want to celebrate all of you and thank you for what you do, the continued support for our students, our staff members. We're fortunate here in Crown Point Schools to have a school board who works together toward common goals and understands the teamwork that is necessary to be a successful board. And I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but that doesn't happen everywhere. And I appreciate that, and there isn't a day go by that I do not take that for granted. So I appreciate you guys, and just thank you for the way that you continue to support us and lead our school corporation. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Terrell, and for the kind words on behalf of the board. 7.01, other business of the board. Anything, we have something, I'm sorry, Mr. Vassar?
Yes, keeping up my duties for legislative liaison. As you know, down in Indianapolis, it's a short session. And as Dr. Terrell mentioned before the meeting, they're going to try to crab as much in as they can. The big things that are going on right now is, today was a headliner, moving school referendums to November instead of having the choice of May or November. So we'll see how much traction that gains along the way. There was an I-read pass. Students not passing was a mandatory retention. That's being talked about, but it doesn't seem to be gathering a whole lot of traction downstate. I'm scheduled to be down there February 6th for the State House Day, so I'll have a much more complete report for you after that.
Thank you, Mr. Vassar, appreciate that, and the information that you provided us with this evening on updates. Board statements of appreciation and recognition.
Mr. Angel,
Oh.
real quick, going
Yes.
back, I'm sorry,
No, we're
other
good.
business. I don't know if we have an update on the transition from RDS to Parent Square, and if anybody could comment on that.
Sure.
Where we're at in that process.
Yeah.
I think it's important enough to address.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Gianfermi if he would, there's so many different levels and it impacts so many different departments, but, I think Mark can give us a pretty good idea
So
of where we
the
are.
Power School is what we're? Power School. So we have made a lot of headway, our tech department. There was some additional training that was needed for our tech department to really be able to manage the transition to our folks. That training was completed, and once that was completed, we were able to do some big things. We are still working on it. It's very complex. There's a lot of things behind the scenes of just marrying those systems. Some of the big things that were accomplished, though, was getting those grades to populate a report card, and attendance letters are now available. A huge thing that we had to do was we had to get transcripts ready, and we had to get historical grades and historical transcripts up to date. That was a monster task that has been accomplished. One of the biggest things that we need to tackle now is for our learning management system, Buzz, to automatically populate grades into Power School. And that takes a lot of coding. It's not just a simple couple buttons. So we feel confident that once that automating grade pass back starts happening, a lot of the other things will fall right into place. So it was a lot to start, and everybody I've talked to, other school corporations say, it takes a minute to get it settled in, but I'm pretty proud of our folks at the building level who have just continued to move forward. We've asked our teachers to do a little extra inputting manually, and they've done that. And so that I really think our tech department has rolled up their sleeves and are tackling a lot of things at one time, and we're pretty confident that things are going to start coming together here quickly.
I appreciate your comments and the fact that all our people are working diligently and hard to get that transition in place. So it's a monumental task, right? I mean, we've had RDS for how long?
I think we go way back beyond 20 years.
20 years, so.
Sorry, I had to look at you, Jim, by seeing.
I did too.
3 days before water, I think.
So we appreciate, I just want to say thank you to all those that are working hard on that. I know we appreciate the patience of families and parents, and especially at the end of the semester, as people are applying for college, there's a lot of pressure. But certainly appreciate everyone's efforts and continued effort to get that transitioned over. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other under board, other business? With that, moved to item 8.01, board statements of appreciation, recognition. Anything this evening, Mr. Vassar?
Well, as I typically in these meetings tend to point out the not the marquee players, but as I passed a school crossing guard today, and I realize they're employed by the city, but obviously they're there to help our kids, and the things that they're doing to keep our kids safe can't really be understated. Tomorrow morning, God only knows what that's going to look like with the weather pattern that's here and maybe coming. So just really appreciate those folks that stand out there in the cold and the rain and the dark and everything else. So they're vital to our students' safety.
Thank you, Mr. Fasher. Mr. Babjack, anything this evening?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Smith? I have a couple here, hopefully I won't forget. I'm making sure I clarify this. It's the special needs cheerleading squad on Saturday, or? The Blazers, okay. So I want to make sure they got their just due. That's the one game which I didn't know got postponed from Friday to Saturday, where one of the special needs students sings the national anthem and the Blazers perform. And I've probably been to the last 6 of those, not even knowing that that was Friday night, that got moved to Saturday. And the young lady that sang the national anthem, and once again, this is someone that I can't even imagine what she felt. I saw her crying afterwards, and she knocked it out of the park. I mean, so congratulations to all those involved with putting that together. The visiting crowd from Chesterton was an amazement, so thank you to all those that are part of that group. The other one is to our custodial staff and all those involved with the cleanup at Taft. For those of you that might not know, we had a little water thing there from a sprinkler head that did some damage. Luckily, at about 3:05 after the school day last Wednesday. And by Thursday, with the help of Dion Katsuris from Skillman and getting the right people out there to mitigate, you would have never known what looked like a hurricane hit it the next day, and pretty much we're right back to a functional school court less than, what's that, 14 hours later. Yeah. So kudos to all those involved. Because I was there Saturday for the Olympiad thing, but just on a side note, what a spectacular event that is, being that was my first one. I spoke with the custodial staff in a little area, thanking them for their extra work that was needed to help out those besides the mitigation team that we hired from an outside firm to take care of all that. So thank you to all those. And just my little last word on the Science Olympiad. I showed up at the beginning of it at 8 o'clock, and being that this was the first one we held, I mean, there's schools coming from everywhere, kids arriving, and complete chaos. Yet somehow, some way, everybody got to the sections they were supposed to get to with 500 students of middle schoolers and high schoolers, and being that it's early in the morning. One of our instructors, our Wheeler coach, saw that it was an opportunity for someone from the board to get involved in pictures, so I was grabbed and pulled to take some pictures with our team. So I said, well, if I was forced to do it, kids, you guys all got to get up here with me. So I made sure some of those probably weren't like me. Don't like, photography that much. Just get the picture over and let's move on with the day. So that all worked out. So it was a great event, and we were handing out awards, Mr. Gian Fermi, Mayor Pete Land. So, and you know what? It was like someone touched base. The surprises on their faces, some of these schools, and we're talking smaller schools too. Whiting, a school from Illinois, Benton Central from, far, far away. Northridge had like 6 teams represented at the high school level. And then, what was the one from Illinois? You remember, Mark? Naperville, one of the but it looks like it was like a separation of the big Naperville school corp. It was like a homeschool version of it or something like that. I mean, it was just incredible to see these kids. And I was looking as I was walking around classroom to classroom at some of the projects and the subject matters, and I mean, I couldn't be a judge in any category, let me just tell you that. And I don't consider myself overly intelligent, but I'm telling you, this is detailed stuff. So kudos to all those involved, and especially our leaders that took the initiative to host one. I did find out that this is an invitational, so it's kind of like a practice event for the big regionals and state competition that follows later on. They even mentioned at the closing that they're going to try to move it up to where it could be not during this type of weather, maybe earlier in the year, so you kind of can take this and then not 1 month later preparing for regionals or state. So once again, thank you to all those involved. So with that, to those few high school students that have texted me during this meeting, school decision has not been made as of yet. That'll be made by the individuals that make that, at Dr. Terrell and our transportation director and those on the cabinet. So I just wanted to make sure when people saw me looking at their phone, it's the few high school students that I still know. And no, we have not made a decision on school for tomorrow morning. So with that, on item 9, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Babjack. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? That carries 4-0. Thank you. Have a good evening.